Hi, everybody. My name's Andy. We're here to talk about the Natural History Museum of Denmark and their new open source natural history collection platform today. I'll just give you a bit of an idea about how it's gonna work. Roughly speaking, we're just gonna do some introductions into who we are, tell you a bit about the project, and then generally discuss the project, hopefully with your input from the questions in the chat, if that's possible, or in case there are no questions, we do have backup questions, but yours take precedence. So please do ask us anything you like and pop them in the chat. And as if you could just skip the slides forward, thanks. So I'm Andy Cummins. I work for a company in Brighton, in the UK, called Cogapp. We're a digital agency, and we've been working with museums, galleries, archives, libraries, etc. for a really long time, maybe 30, 35 years, maybe 30 years. I've worked on them. I have a technical background, and I was project director on this project, so kind of steering the project, dipping in and out here and there, sort of oversight from the Cogapp side. Neil?
Hi everyone, I'm Neil Hawkins. I'm a senior developer at Cogapp, and I was a technical lead on this project with the Natural History Museum of Denmark. So that involved getting involved from the beginning in the proposal stage and conceiving of the plans to build the end product, and working closely with Anders and Andy here. Anders.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Anders. I am head of design and digital at the Natural History Museum. I've been working on digital projects, both in the galleries and the collections, and I've been kind of steering the project on the museum side, as we for a long time really wanted to create these this open digital portal. I think I'm just gonna quickly just give you an idea of what is the Natural History Museum and what are our collections. And one of the key things I wish I could do is just to bring you there and see the collections as they are. They are immense. We have 14 million objects in our collections, and we are also spread around different sites. And now you see some really neat photos here, but in reality, it's a really large collection divided into many small divisions, and only a few tiny things are actually in reality at display, whilst the 14 million objects are in the behinds. Our collection is one of those that goes almost, it's one of the oldest actually. I believe there are a few natural history museums in Italy that are older than ours, but it's 400 years. And it contains of anything from meteorites to beetles and whale skeletons. It's sort of like an archive of everything we have on the planet. There are things that are older than our own solar system, but there's also what we're really proud of is like we have these time series, so we can see what happened since the 16th century up to today, and we can basically see how we affect our planet or whatever we want to investigate. Now, all this ideally is sitting in a collection management system, and we are using something called Specify. We decided on that system in 15. In reality, we got it more kind of moved in 20, I would say. The thing about having, and the vision about having open collections is that we would really like to show all the things we have, all the meteorites, all the butterflies, etc. But the reality of our museum is actually that we can't really share it that easily. As you see here, it's just a quote from one we interviewed. Like, it's just who knows who, and then you can call up. It's also like, somebody asks what's in the collection, they'll have to email me. That's something where our collection managers could often say. At the larger picture around in the EU at the moment, all the natural history museums are now trying to come together and create one big infrastructure that should be collecting all the collections into one system. And that's also been a driver for us to basically say, okay, we need to find a way how to invert our databases and share everything that we have in behind the thick walls. So this is an initiative that is running at the moment. And it's basically to compare with, if you say it in one sentence, one world, one collection. So it's a whole natural heritage that we had. So what to do? We started off planning a bit and to look at how could we invert or specify, what could we do? And the first thing we just quickly did was to look a little bit about what's out there. So we did a kind of a landscape analysis of natural history museums, online collection portals, and others. And there were a few learnings of it. When we mapped them, you could say qualitatively a bit out, then you could say that we learned that many of these portals, they actually are built under some assumptions that people know what they're looking for. That is that if you are really an expert in something and you want to know about, and you want to find, do they have this Diptera insect or something, you could type that in and find that on a digital collection basis, but you couldn't kind of come in with an open question or like just browse along. And many natural history collections at that time, I have to say this was 19, were mainly built as sort of data deposits and list views, table structures. There were very few, it wasn't that visual. And we did some group testing of what would people like to have of such a portal. And we heard from laymen or non-experts that to see to get a visual image of our collections and see what's on the shelf was interesting. To be taken by the hand, accessibility, to be welcome, feel welcome, not just be met by scientific terms was important. And also that you can share it, social media or like from our experts. And that's something internal at a museum. People want to have it as a pretty fast tool. I want to see what we got. Can I share this with my colleagues or my other curators? I wanted to have specific needs of the disciplines. Geology has different needs than zoology. It now gets a bit into our technical specs, and then also that it's fast and shorten the time it takes to just use our portal. So with this, we simply dreamt or wanted to simply see, could we build a visual and a dynamic collections portal for everyone, basically, both to support our museum, but also in a broader sense to support our national audience as well as international audiences. And I can say also that through the MCN community, we also knew about the work of Cogapp, and this is how our collaboration basically started. Now over to you, Andy.
Cool, thanks, Anders. And yeah, like Anders said, I actually met Anders on a plane. Maybe I can't remember where we were going, but it was to MCN, and he noticed that I was writing my talk on the plane, which maybe is not the best thing to be doing. But so we started talking then, and a few years later there was the opportunity to pitch for some work. And when something like that comes into Cogapp, we usually take a look at the work, and we hold it up to these principles that are on the screen, and we take these principles quite seriously. And I'm just going to kind of map our sort of planning and goals against these principles. So on the next slide, you'll see I've drawn out a couple of things here. So you've got better for the people who use our work and better for our clients. And this really means that when we do our work, we're trying to make sure that the audiences get what they need, as Anders said, both scientific and researchers in this case, and the general public, but also our clients. So we want to make sure that our clients' lives are made easier, or at least minimize the difficulty of this extra work that goes into putting this kind of thing online. And with the numbers that Anders is talking about, 14 million items, that's a lot, that's hard work. And they're all really, really different to one another. And the language is very difficult, and the domain knowledge is extensive. So to get the opportunity to get under the skin of that was really exciting to us. So as you can see here, we wanted to build an accessible bilingual destination for both the public and scientists, but also present the museum as it really is. You know, it's a modern research-based facility, for want of a better word, and we wanted to show that you can dig into this stuff in a nice, clear, clean way, but maintain that professionalism of the scientific research. It's, you know, it's in the title of this talk, leading our industry forward. We try to do that in whatever way we can throughout our work. So we share our work, ideally, whether it's open source, like it is in this case, which was really exciting for us, but also using standards. You know, we're big fans of IIIF, and this entire collection that is online so far is all accessible via IIIF, and you can download manifests, you can download images, and take advantage of all of that, which then digs into cross-institutional research. So some other natural history collecting institutions are starting to support IIIF. This means that you can put specimens from these distinct institutions side by side online for the first time and really compare and contrast those collections. We also wanted to, I mean, this came out in our discovery work. We discovered something called GBIF that Anders knew all about because they're his neighbors in Denmark. But this is a really science-based or science-oriented biodiversity information facility. It's the Global Biodiversity Information Facility, really driven at scientists. But we saw an opportunity to push Anders's institution's information through this platform and then draw it out the other side to take advantage of that work that's already gone in there and serve the scientific community, and then take advantage of that work and present it in a more user-friendly way, say, for people who might visit the museum, you know, school children, people like that. The last one is, you know, just the NHMD's mission is to, you know, further research and in all ways in our sort of natural world, and you know, Cogapp is very in tune with that kind of thing. So as part of our mission to try and enable the urgent changes that we need to make a sustainable world, and this one in our own way obviously tick that box, so we're really excited to work in that way. Next is the development. Neil, do you want to talk a bit about that?
I will, if I can find the mute button. Classic. So the technical development really started with approaching what we're working with. So when we approach a new project at Cogapp with a new set of collections data, particularly in this instance, as it's the sort of first properly scientific set of collections data that we'd worked with, or certainly that I had worked with, we really like to dig into things and get under the skin of it. And part of that exploration is to find out what's in use, what data is in use, how it's in use, where it's stored, and then work out from there, how do we get it out? What do we need to do to make it suitable for public consumption and publish it and all that sort of thing. So the aim really is to be able to have a system in place at the end, which can gather that data from various sources, ideally autonomously, then process it and publish it. So at the Natural History Museum of Denmark, there's two main types of data that we're working with. There's the actual collection information, so that's the specimen records, or the objects, which we refer to them as. As Anders said, they're stored using Specify 7, which is the collection management system in use. That's a biological collections data management platform, specialist data management platform, which is open source and available on GitHub, if anybody's interested. Records from Specify are exported in what's known as Darwin Core archive format. This is a flexible but fairly simple way of compiling biodiversity data into a neat package. Initially, this sounded really scary, I have to admit. And the archive it turned out the archive file format is actually quite nice and easy to work with. It's been very well designed as a standard for sharing biodiversity information, which is complex, but the way of sharing it is actually quite straightforward and simple. Now, just to pull out one of the main challenges of so Anders touched on the ambitions for what the museum wanted to present to people. I think one of the main challenges we identified was how we were going to use common names for specimens and for species. So within the museum context, a scientific name for something is widely used and understood, but the common name or the vernacular term for something is probably what a layperson or you or I, Andy, would use to search something. So easy ways to slice and dice and query the objects using non-expert terms was the main challenge we identified there. And so that's the collection data, metadata side of things. And then images are the other big part of this, of presenting this collection. Now, images are attached, it turns out, to records in Specify. They're stored on a separate media server at the museum. Various formats they come in and sizes ranging from small to incredibly large. Obviously challenges there in terms of processing them, in terms of implications of storage costs and all those sort of things. But the outcome really was, okay, make them available via IIIF standards, then we can use them in a consistent way on the application, have all the things that IIIF gives us, fast, rich, deep zoom delivery of the images.
Right.
That's all right, Anderson, no worries. Right, nearly at the end. And then, yeah, making the object data and the images accessible to people, and if not trivial, easy, very easy for people to use and share. So here's a technical overview or architectural overview of the end result. Now, in terms of collections data, you can see here on the left, we've got the Specify 7 bubble or circle. And as Anders and Andy mentioned, we decided to, rather than building a whole new pipeline for processing specimen data, we actually worked with GBIF and their existing data infrastructure to process information from the Specify collection system. Now, GBIF have a data infrastructure that ingests information from Specify on an automated basis, processes it, interprets the records. So just to clarify, the records are occurrence records, which are instances of when a species has been spotted at a particular place and time. So these records are parsed and interpreted by GBIF, who do certain things like checking the taxonomic terms attached to them, reconciling them against its own backbone and international checklists of species information, lots of clever things, and a very robust infrastructure they have built for doing that. So that was a decision we took early, which was actually a change from the original plan, but I think the way we pivoted the project there was of massive benefit to the project and also other goals of the museum in terms of sharing data with GBIF and potentially wider ambitions of being able to share information with things like Disco, as Anders mentioned. So we're using the GBIF APIs then, after it's been processed, to access object level information on the website. So that's all available under Creative Commons licenses from their APIs. And that provides our object level data and search capabilities. Now, there are instances where the GBIF APIs don't provide quite what we need for the application. So we did build some of our own smaller data structures around this. So you can see in the middle, we have this data store circle with vernacular search and image metadata. So there we have a species level set of data, which is specific to the Natural History Museum. So one of the things that we found we couldn't do with GBIF was get species information at an institution granularity. So we have some custom work there to build some separate things which drive things like vernacular search. So being able to search for the common name of the species rather than its scientific name. The images we have a IIIF image pipeline. So the data source again is specify. We have a scheduled job which harvests objects from specify, pulls out references to images, and then puts those images into the start of the pipeline, which then kicks off a whole bunch of serverless infrastructure which processes the images. And the end result is an image server which looks at an image bucket which has been processed, and those are just served straight to the application. One other thing I'll just quickly touch on here is that we have some really cool maps on the website, and these use the GBIF Maps API, which is a really fantastic API for data with specimen data with geographic information.
Sure.
And we're also making use of tiles from the Stamen design, which really neatly fit in with the design of the website. So I think that's one of my favorite parts of it, but that's not on this diagram. I think that's enough technical.
Cool. Thanks,
Before
Neil.
we lose any more people.
Well, people can follow up with you, I'm sure. So Anders, do you want to give us a quick spin of the site?
Yeah, I would like to, yes. So here you see, actually, the site has not gone, well, we have a silent launch, so you're actually having here a sneak peek of the collections portal. We just took a few slides, but I think we should also do a little live demo of it just in a second. But this is the front page, and well, it's built so you can see we have 14 million objects, but we certainly don't have 14 million objects in the portal yet. But there is a little counter. And you can see that we have reached, during the last months of this project, we've actually managed to get 353,000 legacy data pushed in there. And it's, as a museum person here, I'm really happy about this, because before we were doing digitalization sort of ad hoc and when people had time, but now there's even a kind of a motivation. You can go on your portal site and you can see what, if you registered something yesterday, theoretically the counter would then keep going. So as an internal culture thing here, this is really nice. You can search, you can see here, you can go straight to advanced search. We'll try that in a second here, just to give you another, here's some images for the from the mobile version. This, what you're looking at, is a giant squid, and there's deep zoom functions with this, and you can see there's a design over here where you can either download the photo, anchor it, full screen it, zoom, etc. Here we are into the advanced search, and you can see here you don't need to know that a giant squid is technically called Architeuthis ducks, but you could actually just write giant squid, and then there's an autocomplete, and you will see the suggestions coming up. But let's.
A key thing there, Anders, is that information isn't in your collection management system. The giant squid information that happens as part of the publication to this platform through GBIF. So we're kind of enriching the material that the institution holds through GBIF and through some work that Neil and other colleagues have done to enable this to happen. So if you went in to specify the museum's collection management system and search for giant squid, probably nothing would come up, right, Anders? Maybe nothing. The odd notes or something.
Yeah, nothing. Yeah, all our data is basically just a scientific name, a year, an occurrence, etc. So to get to this point, all the data needs to be enriched. But let's try here, and I'm going to stop sharing here and just see if we can get, let's see here, do a Chrome. And then share the screen here. I hope you all see this. And this is again the front page. We feature some of our collections already here on the first page. There's kind of like take a peek. You can basically just, with an informal tone, let people come in. And then if we start to write something, it could be a butterfly, basically. Then we can see where we get. Oh, sorry about that. I took it here, so we can try it. Galathea is a very known expedition, for instance, that we have had. Here we get some of all our occurrence. At the moment, we don't have many images of all things, but we could show. So let's see what we got of images. And then you get into this mysterious world of deep sea creatures that were collected during the Galathea expedition. And if we press one of them, this is just one example, then we're able to show that in multiple images, downloaded. There's also labels and other images. You can share it. There's a IIIF manifest. For the researchers, there's also the real data, basically. You can harvest that out and have all the data. But we also show here the full object detailed here, which is basically the hardcore data that is stored in the database. Now, many of these are also made so you can basically hover out and link to the data, so you can basically browse around in the database. We did some initial testing, as I just mentioned in the before we started off the project, and one of the researchers even said, like, well, even though I'm really interested in something special, I'm always interested in the things that are just around it. So this serves that need also. Now, if we just go back again and go to the map that Neil was just mentioning, which is a really nice feature. Everybody can relate to maps, and our museum and me has never really seen what is our geographical coverage here. And with this, you can see for out of the 86,000 occurrences that we now have geographically geolocated, you can zoom in on this nice map, which is Stamen design, and we can basically start to see what we got from, let's say, Faroe Islands. Well, we got 72 objects from Faroe Islands. We can see if they are photographed or if they're just the data, and we can browse them out here. So that's basically how it works. It's a really lovely map that suits the design.
You might have seen on the little panel that came out, we don't have it for everything, but where we have the information, we're always using the vernacular terms to keep that accessibility level as high as possible.
There's also more filters built into the portal. You can actually search for country, or we could also say what came to the museum between 1662 to 1832. Now on the map here, it's not that much because it's not geo-referenced, but if we did the list view, it would be a lot of more specimens that came in. We can try.
And while Anders is doing that, I guess, like from the open source perspective, because we're using these kind of other platforms, like be it Specify or GBIF, anyone who has, so GBIF is a big deal in this world. And so if you have specimen or occurrence information in GBIF, then the work that we've done together would give you a big head start on making something that looks like this. And there are a lot of institutions in there, a lot of museums, which hopefully once we go live in a few weeks or whenever it is, we can send them, some information in case they're interested in making use of it. but also there are other kinds of collecting institutions in there, universities and so forth, and research universities.
And maybe if I just go back, you can see another feature that has been built in here is that several of the, like there's a little tag on each object that already kind of leads the way, because many organisms on the planet, some don't even have a triple name. But if you then at least tell people, well, we are within the mollusk, we are within the snails now, that's where we're going. So we're already kind of telling that. So this is hard coded into and not a part of the data either that we pull out of.
That's another.
It's kind of a hierarchy of how can we help someone orient themselves within this set of material by saying, well, here's a strange organism. Somebody probably won't know what it really is classed as, but they might know the one above, or it might not even have a class at that level, and it goes one above to something that we think somebody would recognize and be able to then make a more informed decision around where they go next. That's right, isn't it, Neil, roughly?
Yeah, exactly. And while this is a very API-driven site, it's not completely sort of free range, as it were. There are, there's a very sort of basic content management ability, which essentially is a few files which you use to tell the website which collections should it pull in, which specimens should it feature, which terms should it use on label for particular labels and terms. And so, again, from the open source angle, that's very adaptable. If you have data sets in GBIF, for example, it's a case of changing the identifiers for those data sets.
And then it also accommodates the language. So obviously,
we haven't shown that.
Kindly stick into English for us today, but he and his team were able to translate the interface language and text, and that's all in there.
So
should we go on to questions now? Yeah,
I think.
So we've got like 12 minutes for questions, and there's some in the chat. I scroll back. So Andrea asked about the non-experts that you interviewed, Anders. Do you mean museum visitors or non-academic science enthusiasts, or was it a bit of a? It
was a group of non-scientists, basically. We invited people in who didn't have a scientific background, and then what we did actually was that we placed a lot of objects around in the room. We grouped them a little bit, so the idea was basically that they were walking around in a website, but they didn't know it, and then they could pick up the objects that were on the that were grouped on different tables, and then we were asked why they would pick this object, or what would they like to see, etc. And so that was how that was done.
Cool. Next one's does Specify act as your collection management system as well? That is the collection management system, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, so that's effectively, like TMS for an art museum or whatever. It's also open source, or certainly.
Yep, that's right.
And there's a consortium behind it, and it's geared towards natural history collections. And like Neil says, it has the ability to publish to GBIF, which is what we took advantage of.
Good question from Francis.
Mm-hmm.
And Anders, do you have plans to supplement permanently your museum data with data from GBIF? So talking about vernacular terms here, I think specifically, which I don't know if that would. It seems like handling vernacular terms has been quite uncontroversial with your colleagues, which has been great, I must say. But maybe putting them in the collection system would start a fight potentially. I don't know.
Yeah, at the moment, if I understand correctly, I mean, at the moment we will continue using the backbone from GBIF with the vernacular terms. I'm aware that it's not all perfect, but it's really a giant step as forward as we can get. I know that in other portals that special vernacular databases are being used, but I believe this resources that GBIF serves is really good, and so we're going to stick with that.
Yeah. So Francis, where you say, would it be added instead? I think it's actually, this is all new to Cogapp as we learned as we went through, but it's quite, the scientific terms are scientific, as in they are what they are, and that's what they are. The vernacular terms are less so. So you can have, what was the example? It was a robin, so that somebody mentioned at one point. A robin in the UK is different to a robin somewhere else. I think it might have even been Canada or the US, maybe, I can't remember. But so literally the vernacular terms are almost contextual in some ways, and that same, I think the same deal for Denmark. There was a whole list of vernacular terms that are specific to Denmark. So if you did supplement the scientific language, you would have to supplement it knowing that it would be misconstrued depending who was reading it, because you would have to have a vernacular term for what people in the UK call something, and a vernacular term for what people in Denmark call something. So yes, that's why the controversial thing we were happy about, because that could be a whole political tricksy thing.
Cool. I think we might have misread Francis' question there, but so if that's been the case, sorry, Francis.
So I think there was one more, but I've lost it.
Thanks, Adrian. That's a nice comment.
Yeah, and thanks, Andrea, too, for the sort of endangered status. Was another benefit of us saying, well, let's embrace GBIF. They've been working on this for years. Take the good work they're doing, which is to kind of rationalize a lot of this stuff across international borders, and then we can focus on taking the good parts of that we think would be useful for the general public, like, you know, the maps and the endangered status, whilst leaving some of the other stuff in GBIF, where scientists know where, you know, that's where they live a lot of the time, and so they can go there and look at all of that additional stuff that we maybe don't foreground as much on the portal that we've built together.
Yeah, they're very efficient at GBIF, I'd say. Every time we said, oh, maybe we'll pull this data in from, you know, some institution or the endangered list, it's, you know, we'd send an email and Thomas at GBIF would be like, oh no, we just done that, so you can get it through here. Oh, okay, fine. Yeah.
So in some ways we're lucky, I think. So literally, I think they're next door or in the same building as Anders, this place. But one of the other, like Anders said about the incentive to get things up on the portal has helped people push forward on Specify. It's also every single one of those things that's on the portal is now in GBIF, which is also, you know, a kind of a big driver for the museum, isn't it, Anders? You're kind of you're meant to be doing that. It's a relationship you want to foster.
The portal actually, by using GBIF and all the benefits that it gives us, we're also closing a really important step for the museum, which is that everything that we have in our collections ultimately needs to go to GBIF also to be registered there, because it then becomes available for any scientist around in the world. So now this portal that we built with the advantages from GBIF actually has closed or done that for us. So now we export things automatically from our collection management system, goes into GBIF, comes back to the portal, even in a more enriched way.
And it's also like GBIF like it too, because, you know, they want this information, because the more information that's in there, the richer their data set, and the more that can happen in terms of research. So it's a very kind of, you know, we put a lot of effort into this work, but it's almost like, because of the way we designed the system and the conversations we had and the choices we made on the way through, that work is multiplying in the benefits of where it's being published and how it's being published for the different audience. Especially
with, obviously, GBIF is a prominent source for people to cite and use as a citation of data sources, and I'm sure that's what people would want to continue to do in the academic world. So it's important for those things to be there for that reason as well.
Adrian's asking, how are you handling the selected specimens? Is that curated, Anders?
At the moment, yes. At the moment, it's we have hard coded that into the design, but we can actually we can move that around as we go along. You can say from now on we are really going to make a massive digitalization push and produce a lot of more images. The next idea we're also going to think about is 3D scans and stuff like that, and all that we will now. Once we get launched, and we're really excited to do that, then we will start to tweak that as we go along. Yeah, because
this project was conceived as almost like a beta V1 project. This is very much a get the building blocks in place so that Anders and his colleagues can work in the areas they know. Use their expertise and specify GBIF and digitization. We created effectively a pipeline for them to then drop this stuff into, which it comes out the other end looking great for everyone under the NHMD kind of branding and everything, and it's taken a stop at GBIF on the way through to serve broader scientific communities.
So two important things. One on that, related to that, is from the museum's point of view and from the side of things of the staff there's nothing really additional on them. So the publication pre-specify is the single point at which data comes out, and then it's handled by different systems from there. So people don't have to learn new systems or get their hands dirty doing things to move files around in certain ways. So that's been a really nice outcome. And the other one I've just completely forgotten. So I know this when Anders said the hard-coded species. So it's sort of hard-coded in that it's basically been turned into a very lightweight CMS, in that Anders can change a file on GitHub and then click a button and it will automatically redeploy the website. So it's like semi-hard-coded, I guess, but not completely permanent.
Yeah. Is there any? Oh, there's one more question here, I think. Probably have to be the last one, so we've got 2 minutes left. Which parts of the model we showed are open source? The Cogapp refinery services and the Open Collections web app, or? So basically, not Cogapp refinery services, which basically handles the image conversion sort of en masse. So Anders and his team could drop in 300,000 images in there and it would process them all relatively quickly. And that doesn't usually happen, but they do a bit at a time. All the rest of it is open source, and the way that we incorporated Cogapp refinery services in there is in such a way that it's kind of a module. If you already had a IIIF image server with your images in there, you would just use that one. And if you didn't have that, you could set up your own, talk to Cogapp refinery services or some other IIIF infrastructure. But yeah, I mean, on the last slide, I think, which we'll put up on Sked, is we'll have links to those things. And I'll just say this in case we forget, Anders, but it hasn't launched yet. It is, you can look at it all online, but we're not really shouting about it because we don't want to ruin Anders's PR launch, which is hopefully next week, maybe the week after. But you can blame Anders anyway. It's his idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are we going to get kicked off? Should we end it politely?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks everyone for coming today. I really appreciate the questions, were great. And also it's really nice to hear comments that praise the work we've done. It took us a while. So it's really good to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you.